Welcome back to Warrington Basketball. Today we are joined by Sam Fitzpatrick from Preston Pride. We've got Steve Welsh from Bridgewater Jets, and we've got Andy Holmes, team manager at Cheshire Wire. Also a basketball parent, which is fitting, as today we're going to be talking about the perfect parent and what we sort of see and expect from the parent side of things. Guys, I'll start us off. What do you think would be the best way for parents to support their kids, the players? Sam?
I think for me, the perfect parent is someone who's visible. Too often, in the past, I've coached kids and just not met the parents for however many years I've had the kid. So someone who's visible first and foremost. Parents who don't mind mucking in and getting involved. Whether that be setting up before a game, particularly when we talk about National League at our club. Those that don't mind selling teas and coffees, just being around and being generally a pair of hands is an absolute godsend, particularly when we run off volunteers. We're going to probably touch on this later more so, but during the games, just being generally supportive without being arrogant and too much. And potentially the best thing about being a perfect parent, hopefully, is not trying to coach from the sideline. I'm sure I'll rant about that later, but do not coach from the sideline. Let your kid play. Let us do our job as coaches. That's for me.
Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, I think I agree a lot with what Sam's saying there. I think in terms of like perfect parent, obviously you'll get certain parents who'll work a lot and stuff, but the best type of parents are the parents that come in are kind of curious what the kids are doing. It just shows that there's that like level of support at home, and then obviously you communicate with the parents, and then obviously if you've got any jobs that need doing in the club, whether it be small or large, the more help you get, it just means your club can grow obviously a lot more. So obviously for Bridgewater and Cheshire Wire, we have team managers, so they would be in control of sending out all communications and stuff like that. It just means that as a coach, it just means that we can focus on coaching. Obviously just send a message out saying, can we do this? Ask for some volunteers. And obviously I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of parents that at the club that are willing to help. And I think that's probably the biggest thing about perfect parent, really.
Yeah.
Just willingness to help and kind of being there to have a little watch and stuff.
What's it like for yourself, Andy? Obviously, with you being a parent and then as well sort of managing the team, what do you think?
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything that Steve and Sam have said. For me, relatively new into it, my son's only been playing basketball for about 18 months. Started at Bridgewater Jets and has moved on to play up for the Wire under 14s. For me and for my wife, we talked about this last night, getting them to training and matches, simply just doing that in the first instance, watching the session or the game, giving feedback to them and to the coaches if we feel it's appropriate, checking at happiness levels, because you know what kids are like, they don't tend to say very much at times, and sometimes they just go along and shrug the shoulders, yeah, everything's okay. And it sometimes that there can be conflicts and clashes with a certain coach or with a certain child in the team that could potentially be a carryover from something at school or something from another sport and all that kind of stuff. I think it's easy to miss those kind of things if you're not careful. But largely, getting them there and being there for them on the sideline, so when they do something good, the first face they see is yours. And I think that's, having coached kids football for such a long time, I appreciate how many, I don't like the term very much, but, sort of car park parents, I think that's a term that's used quite a lot. They drop them off and come back an hour later.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it anyway.
Yeah. What team policies have any of you come across? So what policies have you got in place for parents? Any of you?
So at Bridgewater, we don't necessarily have anything written down in kind of, obviously, in policy form. But a lot of the time when we get a lot of new parents in, so if we put a new team in, obviously we have a list of jobs that would need filling. So we'd need a team manager, we'd need other little jobs like that. At the ball hall, obviously you need a table official, so you need a parent to volunteer for that. So a lot of the time when we put together like a group, I'll literally just list out the first two jobs would be team manager and then kind of a rough outline of what it is. So contacting, or we use Team App for training and matches, so it'd be updating Team App, and then we chasing replies. A lot of the time the parents are quite good at filling out them, and then obviously the table official, it's obviously teaching them that basically.
Yeah. How's it fit at Preston, Sam?
We've never had anything policies like documents as such. We've only really used them as almost like contracts for players as opposed to for the parents.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's kind of unwritten and you'd like to think should be common sense. Generally being supportive, being around, willing to help. But then equally, I guess we have, I know I do, when I coach, if parents show willing, it's more about having an individual conversation with them about what they can do and how they can help. Because quite a lot of the team manager stuff that happens at our club, parents kind of fall into it as opposed to us advertising it, just through showing willing. So we don't have policies per se. I think we did a number of years ago, but then that just became an admin task of getting them off, getting them signed, getting them back, holding people accountable. Like, it's easier, we found as a club, to just deal with it on a case by case, person by person basis. And I think naturally through when parents come and for sometimes see their kids play for the first time, when they see their attitudes and the way they conduct themselves on the court, something that we, excuse the pun, but pride ourselves on, is it kind of lends itself that the parents should act the same way. In the 10 plus years I've coached National League at Preston, I think I've only ever had to have a word with one parent, and I think that speaks volumes for how we have managed to conduct ourselves as like an unwritten rule type thing, really. Mm-hmm. But that's us at Preston.
Yeah. Andy?
Go on.
I like what we're very fortunate to have Steve, by the way, and I'm not on commission for saying this. Steve's great. I don't know Sam, but Steve's great with the kids. My son, for example, Steve has asked if he can come in and start coaching with some of the even younger ones, which my son absolutely loves. Unfortunately, COVID scuppered that somewhat and got in the way, like it has with a lot of things. But what Sam's saying there about the one of the big difference, the big things that we noticed as a family when we got involved with basketball was the general attitude of the kids and the general attitude of the parents. We'd come from a very much football-oriented background, which is a very different set of circumstances and a very different set of attitudes. And I like when the kid falls down, the kid next to him picks him up. I like the fact that the etiquette on the touchline is 95% positive, and for me that's a policy all on its own without a document. It speaks volumes for the sport, and it's that should be the strap line for me. If I was Basketball England and I was the man, I'd have this is my policy written across the front of my t-shirt with a happy smiling kid on it, and that's what I see a lot of. So yeah. I think it's great.
In terms of, we kind of already touched on it really already, but what would a team expect from a parent, and then flip that as well, what players would expect from a team as well, if you can all sort of touch on that. We'll go back to you, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we touched on it in terms of what we as a club would expect of our parents. That, like I said, Andy made a really good point there actually about just being visible and getting your kids to and from training. I mean, it's kind of fitting now. We're looking at this Corona returning to play, actually, and something as little as just being at the venue with your child. So, God forbid they show symptoms, they can get straight home as opposed to waiting for a bus or a train or something like that. Is something we're considering at the minute, being in the centre of Preston and 2 minutes away from the train station and the bus station, which quite a lot of kids rely on. But then I think what parents can expect from the club is similar to what I touched on before, like that atmosphere and it's not just the on-court stuff that your kids are going to start seeing growth and really excelling. It's the off-court stuff as well. There's countless stories. I'm sure Steve will be the same at Cheshire and Bridgewater. And the number of kids that have that kind of that crossroads and what the sport can do for them and rein them back in and all these skills, life skills, punctuation, communication, teamwork, leadership that they can expect. They're essentially getting life lessons as well as on-court stuff, which I think is invaluable and something that, again, we pride ourselves on and have done a good job of so far.
Steve?
Yeah, I think from a club's point of view, I think obviously number one, the club needs to be a safe environment for the kid. That's kind of obviously what we try and obviously provide as much as possible. Obviously we do give life lessons, punctuation, like what Sam was saying there. I just echo similar to that. And then obviously I've not got any kids, so I wouldn't really know from a parent's point of view, just kind of what I would expect if I had a child and I was sending them to a session. I'd want it to be safe. I'd want them to be getting good coaching and just in like a happy environment where like there's no like bad behaviour from the sidelines from parents or coaches. Kind of there's different styles of coaching, there's different styles that I'd like and I wouldn't like. So.
Yeah. Andy, for yourself, so obviously I know you've been part of it now for 18 months or around that time. When you first started, so from sort of your first days coming into the ball hall, the Warrington Ball Hall, and you let him playing there, to now where he's obviously playing Cheshire Wire, what was your expectations in terms of, were you expecting were you going in with a competitive mindset, or was it just more get him in, see if he likes basketball and just doing it for enjoyment? How did it differ, and then go from what you've seen from the likes of Bridgewater to the differences to Cheshire Wire?
That's a good question. We were introduced to Ball Hall through friends, and we got involved that way. James is very sporty anyway, and was playing football for a team that I just so happened to be managing, and had been for a number of years, from under 7s right through up till under 12s, and we had to pack that in a lack of numbers, which was a shame. But he'd expressed an interest in basketball. From what surprised me with Ball Hall, notwithstanding all the good stuff and all the positivity, and was how much was available very quickly. Mm-hmm. So James went into Bridgewater Jets under the tutelage of Steve and another couple of our lads, Ollie and Alex, who've been fabulous, and they're 2 young lads as well. But they're under Steve's wing, and they've guided our team, and we had a great time this time round. We had a really strong side. But on the back of that, the opportunity for James to then go and coach and look after some younger children and add value came along very quickly. The refereeing course that was open to him through Ball Hall came along very, very quickly. And then out of the blue, marching over the hill, came a trial for Cheshire Wire, which seemed to happen very, very quickly. And James was chosen along with another couple of guys, and then that journey started. We've had one season where James is at the younger end of under 14s, because he's only 14 at the end of this year. Yeah. So he's now going into part 2 of under 14. So hopefully a stronger season this year. Last year was tough. We came up against the older kids like you do when you have this split age, and it was difficult. But the speed at which things came along was a surprise, because if I translate the basketball speed to football, for example, which is a perfect example, to try and get to play for county, even if you insert your town in there before the county, and then maybe even a broader beyond county, seems to take an awful lot longer. The basketball journey seemed to happen quite quickly. Yeah. So I'd be interested on Steve's point of view on that, and Sam's point of view on that, because it does, the wheel seems to turn really fast.
Why do you gents think that is, Sam and Steve?
Well, first of all, you're talking numbers, probably first and foremost. I mean, you've got a lot less numbers playing basketball, that young particularly. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know so many of our kids will come to us at 14, 15, 16 because they've been dropped from football teams or academies, as opposed to just picking up for the first time because they're interested. Yeah. But then also, I think because it's such a small community, really, you can progress pretty quick. I mean, there's quite an open and honest communication amongst many coaches, and actually, I've had kids that have been at the club for 6 months, and that summer they're representing the Northwest. just because, again, it's the numbers, and if you're talented enough and you're good enough, then there's no like red tape or politics to get through. A lot of the time, it's just a conversation and making people aware of who you are, and you can really go where you want to go to that extent.
Steve?
Yeah, I think obviously with Cheshire Wire, they're linked. They kind of link loosely with the ball hall anyway, so that tends to be where a lot of their kids come from.
Yeah.
So from ball hall to obviously National League, I'll get a chance to see the kids play, and then obviously if you see any kids who've got any sort of talent, then they sort of get fast tracked that way. And then in terms of like obviously at the ball hall, if someone comes to a come and try session, the business model of the ball hall is to try and get as many teams playing, because that's obviously how they generate their revenue. So obviously it's in their interest to have more teams, which then means you can split the leagues and have obviously a lower band ability, so that you've got new kids coming in, they're playing. You learn so much more by actually playing in a game as opposed to training. I know the new way of teaching is like small sided games, just to try and give that game experience in training. And obviously the more they play, obviously you can fast track them a little bit. And then obviously with Cheshire Wire, they've got a lot of junior teams now, so they're trying to get like a lower banded ability to then build them up to go up through the age groups. So I think that's kind of how they get kind of fast tracked. And then obviously with the ball hall refereeing, obviously they need referees because kids go off to university. We kind of mentor them at a younger age. So soon, I think it's 13 they have to be before they can do the level 1. And then they'll shadow. After they do their course, they shadow an experienced referee until they're kind of comfortable to referee on their own. And obviously they'll have a second referee kind of with them as well. But yeah, that's it really.
The next one we're going to touch on, again, we have already touched on, and it's kind of, it's an obvious one. It's just a bit of common sense really, but parent etiquette. Andy, we'll start with you, mate. What's your thoughts?
Well, as I say, coming from a direct comparison background of football versus basketball, it's a night and day difference for me. 95% of the time, I've had an interesting set of circumstances only once, and they shall remain nameless. But it was only once, and it was actually more to do with referees and coaches than it was to do with parents. But inevitably, the odd parent got sort of dragged in to the situation. But I think from what I can see, and I speak personally for myself, I've never played basketball in my life. Played a lot of rugby and a lot of football and other sports, but never basketball. So the big difference, and I see this in a lot of parents on the touchline as well, is because they haven't played it, they're not trying to live their dreams out through their kids, which I think is true of football a lot of the time, and to an extent rugby. But I sit there and I'm learning all day long, and Steve sat next to me sometime explaining to me the hand gestures that the referee's doing, because I haven't got a clue. And I think, it feels a little bit more casual, if that's the right word. It doesn't feel as intense as it does on the sideline of a football match. It just feels a little bit smoother, like it's out of your control, so you're just happy to let it go and let it happen. And I don't know if that makes sense. But
I find personally with the newer parents that are, you can tell they're normally from either a football background or a rugby background, and they don't fully understand the rules. If they hear a coach say that something's wrong, they'll get onto that then, and then that's when they start getting a bit worked up. But if they don't fully understand the rule, they can't really be shouting it on the sideline. But you do find sometimes that, or I find that I have to maybe speak to the odd parent. Not often, but sometimes when they come bouncing over to me and they're like, "Oh, this referee keeps calling X, Y, Z," and it's like, yeah, that's what they can do. That's a rule. So it's not the same as football. Steve, Sam, what do you think? So sideline etiquette.
Go on, I'll let you go, Sam.
Well, just to echo kind of what Andy was touching on there about it is so different to football, and it's funny that actually as a coach, if you have a new kid come and play, you can spot the parents that have been involved in football largely by their etiquette at the sideline. Yeah. You know, little things that just don't really happen in basketball. Like, you don't, as a spectator, you don't have any like kind of communication with the referee, the officials. You just let them get on. Yeah. So the ones that feel the need to start, you know, having little jibes at them or whatever, generally, it's only a quick conversation, but it's just a look, this is not how this sport works. Mm-hmm. I will, because I'm the coach, and you know, I like to argue, but that's my job, not your job. You know, let me do that. You know, and I've touched on it before, but coaching from the sideline is the biggest pet peeve. You know, I've coached kids who will do a move or make a mistake, and rather than look at me for reassurance or guidance, they look straight at the parent. Yeah. Like, well, they're not going to save you. Like, you know, I'll give you the advice or the reassurance or whatever it is that you need at that time. Don't like, you can discuss that with your parent on the way home in the car. Like, don't worry about it for now. For these 40 minutes, let me and your teammates sort out what happens on the court. Don't look to mum or dad, because it's out of their hands at this point. Mm-hmm. You know, but equally, I don't mind. You know, I'd love it when the parents take an interest and really want to know more, want to learn more. You know, and during a game at half time, they might come over and say, "Oh, why did you choose to do this?" And I don't mind that. But it's when they'll come over and suggest tactics at half time. Have you considered running a zone this quarter? Have you considered? It's like, look, this is my job. Don't worry, let me sort that out. You just support your child and, you know, and pick them up if they need it. Let me deal with the on-court stuff.
Steve?
I think one of the things that I kind of try and take into consideration when I'm coaching is kind of players will kind of mirror your body language. If you're all worked up about a referee's missed call, the players then feel there's something wrong, and then it'll then spill over to the parents. Yeah. Kind of if as a coach you can kind of obviously come across cool, collected, it doesn't look like there's any issues, and then the parents shouldn't have any issues about it. It would then obviously it'd be considered out of the norm for them to then kick up a fuss. Yeah. Like in football, you have the tape on the side where they can't cross that line. Yeah. I can't remember what that's called, but obviously they've had to bring that in to try and control parents. But as I say, in basketball, you don't get that. You get like the odd issue here and there, but it's always like people look at them and go, well, why are you doing that? Yeah, because it's like it just seems a much nicer environment, basketball. Okay. Obviously, the referees are left to kind of do their job. Obviously, at the ball hall, if you have a newer referee, you kind of understand that they're going to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes as a coach, I'll explain to my parents and the kids on the side that look, they're new, they're trying their job, but obviously if you don't have a referee, then the game can't go ahead. Mm. And ultimately, in the ball hall, it's 2 20-minute running clock halves. If you're arguing for 5 minutes of that, you've lost a big portion of your game. Yeah. And then you might have 3 kids on the bench that you can't get enough time in. So I think it just comes down to, as a parent, if you're obviously showing interest in your kid, encourage them from the side. But I think if you send mixed messages to your kids, so you got your coach saying one thing in one ear and then another parent in another ear, the kid's gonna not know what to do, and then they don't actually learn anything from playing. They're trying to impress the coach, they're then trying to impress the parent, and then obviously the kid will then fall out of love of basketball, and you lose another kid. So
I think it helps with basketball not being it's popular now, or getting more popular now. For the parents, it probably wasn't as popular, or they might have played it at school or something in the past. If you compare it to football, everyone's played football, so normally parents will think they know everything about football. Whereas with basketball, like what Andy was saying, it's a new sport, so everyone's kind of learning at the same time. So I think they appreciate that a little bit more as well. Final one, the onward journey for a parent. Andy, you can start us off. So again, it's sort of already been touched on, but go ahead.
Yeah, we started ball hall, obviously Bridgewater Jets, moved through to Cheshire Wire quite quickly. I'd never heard of Cheshire Wire. I actually didn't realise that national basketball existed at such a young age. I'll be honest, I really didn't know that. And certainly not at under 12s. That Wire have submitted under 12s teams now, and including the inclusion of girls teams. And I'm not, I don't mean that in a funny way, but there wasn't any, but then all of a sudden there was. So I think that's a growth area of the game. Just for me, a few parents who I sit and talk to at the Bridgewater level ask me a lot about the Cheshire Wire, ask me about the training. Are they solid nights? What does games look like at weekends? What kind of places do you travel to? Is it far away? Is it easy? Is there car share? Is there all that kind of stuff going on? Is it fun? That's a big one that I get asked. Is it fun? What is the difference in intensity, in seriousness levels and all that? And of course there is a difference, but it's still fun. And the under-14s that I'm involved with had a tough season last season, but I think they all had fun. And at the end of it, they all, even though they were on the end of a few canings by some very, very strong sides, they never gave up. They all still looked like they had fun, which is a lot to do with the coaching and to do with the infrastructure that's in place. If it was me starting again, if I'd have known a little bit more of that right at the start, then maybe I would have been a little bit more forewarned, forearmed to let other people know and sort of spread the word, which a large part of this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I see that.
Sam, what's for you? What advice would you give to a parent coming in? So let's go for you at National League level. So a parent that may have been playing at the ball hall or a local league venue, coming over to the National League now. What would you advise?
Well, first I'll just say that the ball hall league is something that we as a club have used for newer teams and newer parents as a means to prepare them for National League. Mm-hmm. Just the idea of having, going from maybe under 11s, under 12s that we have that get odd age appropriate fixtures maybe once every couple of months or whatever, to now we're expecting you, in not this season but the season after, to commit every weekend, travel, all over the northwest. The ball hall's great for that because first of all you get your parents in, which is half the battle. They have to get our kids from Preston to Warrington. We get together, we get to play, which is obviously a massive thing. And like Steve alluded to it, having such a shorter running time on the floor, everyone gets on the floor, so everyone gets minutes, everyone gets to get up and down, rotating as quick as we can. Because at that point, no matter who you are as a coach, you understand that, it's about development, purely development at that level, which is awesome. You can just spread your minutes out, get everyone a game, get all the parents on board. But I think, like I said, the big thing for us in Preston, with National League is warning parents about the travel first and foremost. We're more often than not, until you have to trek it up to Barrow, we're more often than not the one that's kind of out of the way for everyone else. But then also, the regularity of the games, because at local level, we don't get as many fixtures as potentially your Sunday League football team will get. We're not in always organised leagues like that, because obviously National League always takes a priority in court time. So therefore, if we organise a CVL for local clubs to us, there's no guarantee you're playing every week. So, National League is a big step up in time commitments, not just every weekend, but then also where you're travelling to in that time. And I think that the last thing I say to parents is, as soon as you say the words National League, it sounds like some incredible level where, the elite of the elite are going to be, because it's national, and then helping the parents and sometimes the kids as well understand that, look, you have to trust our decision as a coach, that we wouldn't enter you in the National League if you weren't good enough. So don't hear the name National League and assume it's some like professional level. But then also, it's national, but actually it's regionalised. So you don't worry about you hear it and get put off by so much travel, and actually prepping for us going to Warrington is just as good prep as us taking kids to Manchester, or across to yourselves over at Cheshire. So that's the biggest thing that I, forewarn parents about, and what we talk about when we meet.
Yeah. Steve, so go to sort of more local league now, so Bridgewater Jets, your parents that you've got coming in, or new players, what would your advice be for those parents?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it a little bit at the beginning. Obviously, when we get new parents in, you've got to kind of screen them to see, obviously, which parents are more willing. More, obviously, some have got a lot of some have got a little bit of time. They might be self-employed. They might have like hours to spare. Some might just work loads and not be able to commit enough. It's trying to highlight what parents can provide for the club, and then obviously trying to utilize that best. So it'd be informal conversation really. So obviously when you have a new parent come in, you just got to make sure you, number one, introduce yourself.
Yeah.
I know a couple of coaches who obviously in their phone book, it'll be, say you've got little Jimmy turns up to a session and it'll be saved as Jimmy's mum in the phone.
Yeah.
Obviously you need to know, obviously ideally you build a relationship, you get to know their mum and dad's name.
Yeah.
Obviously you've got James's dad, which is Andy, and James's mum, which is Caroline. Obviously you wouldn't get that without that conversation.
Yeah.
Obviously you've just got to build that relationship. If you kind of let them know what your goals are for the club and then just try and align them, and then obviously see where they can fit in with that.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, if you ask and their kid has a good positive experience, they're willing to get involved.
Yeah.
And that'll obviously make it much easier for you as a club to grow, and obviously easier as a coach, and then you can just focus on your coaching.
Gents, anything else to add?
No.
No, I don't think so.
I've got some editing to do to take out the compliments that Andy gave Steve. I can't have that in the final edit. But thank you very much for joining us.
Can you change my lighting as well? Because I've been I'm in by the window, but it keeps going dark and light.
Of course, yeah.
Put a filter on.
We'll give you a nice filter and make you look handsome, mate. Right, thank you very much, gents. We'll have to join up again soon, and we'll get another video in. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you very much.